Anonymous. It's kind of hard to make Anonymous funny, but I did a piece on CSO Online called The Rise of the Chaotic Actor, How to Understand Anonymous and Ourselves. And what I found is most of the press narrative is really scratching the surface and pretty off base. So we did a bunch of discussions at DEF CON and various conferences, where in some cases we actually debated and engaged Anonymous members. And the first and most important takeaway I took from all of these is that it's almost like a Rorschach ink blot. We see in Anonymous what we want to see. We project. Our narrative has said more about us than it has about them, and it's prevented us from understanding what's actually happening on the global stage. The second misnomer is there is not an Anonymous. It is not a singular event. It's not a singular entity with leadership. There are many pockets. Think of it more like a brand or a franchise which can be borrowed by anyone and has been. There are some long-standing members, but others may participate in one and only one operation. Now, I originally carried some cognitive dissonance about some great artwork here. Some cognitive dissonance about, is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? Is it good or is it evil? And when I couldn't really resolve this because I saw certain actors doing noble things or well-intended operations under Anonymous, I did what any self-respecting geek does, and I dusted out my Dungeons & Dragons 3x3 chart, right? So it's not really the vertical good versus evil that defines Anonymous. It's that they are in the lawful versus chaotic, in the chaotic spectrum. They're not tending towards order, but rather disorder. So while this pantheon of characters may include someone like Robin Hood working outside of the system, it also includes chaotic evil like Batman's Joker, right? Some men are not motivated by greed. They just want to watch the world burn. And when you confront some of these, there are some true sociopaths in the group. It's not the majority, but they have a hand in global events right now, and that should give us pause. So there's a lot of sex as well. Lots and lots of anonymous sex. There's a various incestuous family tree stemming from 4chan and B-channel. There's anti-sec, which predates lulsec. And all these diverge and converge over time. I almost didn't include that slide because it's so messy. But the truth is messy. It's a hodgepodge. The most common attribute of all of these sects is they have more in common with Cyndi Lauper than they do with a hardened criminal, because just like Cyndi Lauper, all they want to do is girls just want to have fun, right? So they're doing it for the lulz. Not all of them. There's some real sickos in there. Now, their weapon of choice in most cases is the low-orbit ion cannon. I think they're compensating for something. But in the low-orbit ion cannon, it's a pretty blunt force tool that is a pretty primitive DDoS. But what it's done for risk managers is you went from having a low probability, high-impact event to a very high probability of a DDoS. They're not impossible to defend against, but they're far more prominent. Now, speaking of cannons, these are pieces of cannon fodder. Anonymous uses their charisma and their public relations to attract supporters that can participate. These poor people decided it was cool to protest in Operation Payback. Anonymous didn't teach them how to anonymize themselves, so they found the FBI knocking on their door and being served with papers. So there's a lot of pawns in this game, but no one really knows who's moving the chess pieces. What they do all have in common is, just like the Fight Club zeitgeist, there's a level of frustration and disenfranchisement. They don't feel like they have power, and this makes them powerful, right? It's at least a way to release frustration, but it can be different levels of involvement. Also from Fight Club, you know, you can choose your own level of involvement. So maybe you're doing something to blow off some steam once on one operation and you romanticize, but there are ways to escalate from mischief to mayhem to more serious things that, again, affect things on a global stage. One example of escalation, while we were all traveling here, is, you may recall, in Operation Invade Wall Street, they declared they were going to erase the New York Stock Exchange from the internet on Monday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. And while they failed in their attempt because Lloyd wasn't powerful enough, the fact that they're even targeting such organizations as the attacks on the CIA or other forms of law enforcement mean they're becoming more emboldened and brazen. And that also should give us concern. Now, we challenged the Anonymous group to build a better Anonymous at DEF CON this summer, and one group heard us. Operation Anonymous Analytics is using financial services knowledge to try to seek corruption in publicly traded companies. And although it's vigilante and will probably be wrought with errors, it's still a serious development. You probably heard about kitten killing ABTs all day today. One concern I have is this is God's gift to APTs, right? I can now do an attack for industrial espionage or state-sponsored espionage, and as long as I throw a DDoS and blame it on nullsec, I've covered my tracks, and this has happened more times than you'd be comfortable with. With this level of violation and perpetration, powerful and uninformed people in our governments are making powerfully uninformed decisions. And I fear that we're one violation away from some form of neo-cyber McCarthyism. I am not now, nor have I ever been a member of Anonymous. You should get used to saying that if you use any hacker tools or even a Nessus pen testing suite. There is a fork in the road out of logical necessity, right? So either the continuation to mar and taint the name of Anonymous will contaminate it such that the moral minority will flee a toxic brand painted with a terrorist brush, or some sort of Leviathan will rise. Out of convenience, Hobbes talked about the need for a social contract, that we can come together for mutual good to maybe form some form of organized chaos in which they could police themselves in their ranks and maybe do some purity control on the operations. Although I'd like to see that, I think the more likely outcome is that the moral minority will flee. I'd like to give you some easy answers, I just don't see any. Tomorrow we're going to cover a lot of this at 10 a.m. In our panel, or 11 a.m. on our panel. But if you want some suggested pop culture references, this is source material for the zeitgeist. All I can tell you is, this is not going away. Anonymous is here. They are growing. They are becoming legitimized in the mainstream media. And if you have not confronted yourself with how you will perceive them and engage and what this means to you, now is the time. Thank you.